Okay, so I want to start with a question, the questions that families brought up when I talked about this a little bit. And I've actually had families specifically that commented and were asking about a specific post where I was talking about an assessment. For those of you who don't know my background, I come from healthcare and I actually come from diagnostics. So people are always really surprised when they learn that I come from a testing field of 21 years, why I choose not to focus on that. And the reason is because for 21 years, I saw testing do nothing but fail. And I'm not everyone, but slow down progress and processes. And whenever I saw a physician that would order testing in smaller amounts, I always kind of would ask them questions. And what came out from the very many physicians, well, nowadays, there's not as many clinicians, I will call them. They're more physicians that like to test. It's like a test, don't guess theory. When they don't truly understand the body as a systemic, they think of the body as broken apart pieces that need a specialist. Even the ones who deal, for example, in our emergency departments, they look at the body as broken down systems and then they refer out. So when I would, and I mean, I was in healthcare for 21 years prior, so I had the privilege of, seeing the progression of testing grow. I used to work in a dark room, for those of you who may not know that. And so I would ask these questions, and what really came through was those physicians and clinicians would take more time assessing their patients prior to ordering a test. And the test was used only to affirm and validate what they already knew. Now the approach is to test to get the story, but the patient can tell you the story. And that is why when we go through all of this data that we have access to, and when I say data, especially meta-analysis studies that look at large groups of studies themselves. So that is my take on testing. And but that's just like my take. So I'm going to actually, what came from that conversation in that post was, what is the difference between functional medicine, regular medicine, lifestyle medicine, integrated medicine? So I'm going to break it down really quick for you in a very unbiased way. I know I am biased, but my goal is some people are actually better off and suited for testing. And some families are better suited for understanding terrain and wanting to use it that way. There's no wrong way if it gets you to, think of it as all of the rivers are going towards the same lake. And some rivers are a little bumpier and some rivers are smooth sailing. And I want to offer that no matter what, though, the rivers will get there. You get to decide what river you're going to take. And so long as you do not quit, you'll get to the lake. You might have a broken raft, you might have a couple of bumps and bruises, but you will get there. And so that's the metaphor of your journey to getting your child to independence, is the lake. Okay, so parents would often ask me these questions. So I want to offer that not all medicine is the same. And what are functional tests that can be used? Many of you, I don't know how many of you are aware of this. Maybe some of you have actually gone through many of these things. My preferred test to look at and to order, if I was to order tests, which I can, is the microbiome test. Actually, so usually I like an oat test as like a screening tool, which I do agree that it will only give you a bird's eye view of everything. I like to look at a gut test, a microbiome proliferation test, and inflammation markers is generally important, which are usually shown on some of these tests. And the last test is sometimes, and not in all cases, but depending on where a person lives geographically, an HTMA test, which is a hair analysis test. I know some people feel very differently. They love the HTMA, they love whatever. For myself, for the information I've gathered, for the recurrent and hundreds of families that we've supported, if I am going to choose to order a test, they're in those three or they're all three. Now, I will offer that if a child is a picky eater, I would never order a test. And the reason is, there's only one time in my entire career of this that I saw a test make a difference in a treatment pattern. And it was because it was an actual emergency and the child was suffering from seizures and showed high levels of giardia, which is a high intense parasite that can cause seizures. So there was clear markers that were showing up as well for that. Now, saying that, if a child is a picky eater, these are some of the things that will always show up on tests. Almost, I shouldn't say always, but over 75% of the time, strep and staph, which then automatically puts people into the, do you have PANS, PANDAS, etc. Other things that will show are inflammation, and it will show hindered detox pathways. So no matter what, I know that, and most practitioners know that, so they don't need a marker for that unless they don't know how to treat with food. Now, the foundations are going to alleviate that. And I'll talk a little bit about, this is where I'll talk a little bit more about the differences. And I'm trying to be unbiased, but I will just offer that, is that picky eating has very specific ways of showing up on testing. So think of it as, I guess the right question to ask ourselves in a metaphor is, does a test fix the actual soil? You can test a garden all day long. You can measure the nitrogen, you can look at the phosphorus, you can look at the microbes, but if you never change what you're actually putting in the soil, the numbers aren't going to matter. And I feel like a lot of parents get stuck in very, very cyclic loops of testing and waiting before taking action or changing a supplement protocol. So testing becomes like kind of the action versus the treatment. So now I'm going to talk about a couple of other, like basically breaking down the different sections. So let's explain the 3 types of medicine, or 4 types of medicine. The first one is conventional medicine. I'm sure you all kind of know that. If your child, and why am I even talking about it? Some families still, and I hear about this and it breaks my heart because I used to work in healthcare. Some families will rely really strongly on a holistic approach. I think that's amazing, but there is a time and a place for medicine. And so infections, seizures, broken bones, acute crisis, these are actually life-saving. So when those things happen, it's important for us to use it. So we can look at it as it's the place where we put out fires. It was built for trauma and acute situations. It doesn't rebuild the house though. So think of it as like it's a firefighter. Functional medicine is a little bit more on the spectrum of where's the fire. Think of them as the quality question they're asking is, where's the fire? Test, don't guess. It runs tests, it analyzes data, it looks at labs in detail, and it asks these questions that are really good questions. Why is the gut inflamed? Why are the mitochondria struggling? Why are the nutrients low? And that as a starting point is super powerful. But I want you to understand that they put a lot of fertilizer in without actually looking at some of the already needed components like the microbes. So they use supplements, binders, protocols, and detox stacks for the most part. And honestly, for some families, it's life-changing, especially like biomedical pathways. I get it. So completely unbiased for some families, like it can literally change their lives. Integrative medicine is conventional medicine, some functional tools, some natural therapy. So it's kind of like a mishmash of the first two, actually all 3. So it focuses on a bit of a gentler approach. It's more about balance. It's less extreme, but it does focus a lot on treatment and protocols versus daily habit changes that are going to be what actually heal the generations to come. So what is lifestyle medicine? And obviously I'm biased because I love lifestyle medicine. The question and what they ask is, what if we fix the soil every single day? Instead of asking ourselves, like, what supplements do we add? We ask, what's happening at breakfast? What's happening at bedtime? Is it the nervous system? Is it something in movement? Is it light exposure? Or is it something in connection? So lifestyle medicine is built upon 6 really powerful pillars based on, and I want to offer that lifestyle medicine has the most data because it is one of the only things that we can look for in a long-term space. And with that, and how to break that down, it's that it was built around the fact that studying individuals in different populations that should have nothing to do with each other, that live the longest and the happiest, and per area had the highest centenarians, meaning people that live past 100. What are they doing and how can we study that? And what are the things that allow them to live not just so long, but so well? And it fell in the categories of nutrition, sleep, movement, stress regulation, connection, and toxic reduction. And I think that when we think about longevity in our kids and we think about brain development, lifestyle medicine is at the forefront of showing that even Alzheimer's can be reversed. And even some lifestyle medicine doctors don't believe that yet. But the first study was announced at the Lifestyle Medicine Conference last November. And it was a small clinical study, but but every single member, like the people it was as successful as when they did the heart study. It was so successful, they had to take people out of the control group and put them into the actual study group. So to offer you that, that's why I am a big fan of that. Okay, so we have definitely talked about that at length. So now you have a kind of an understanding of what each of these spaces do. There are different practitioners all over the world. Obviously, you know that we focus on lifestyle medicine. The other thing I'm going to talk about, even though I couldn't find my notes, is I am going to do a little bit of a breakdown. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because like testing, anybody have questions about testing in general? I don't talk about this topic a lot. People just assume I hate it. I think it's really good to have open conversations. Have any of you had testing? How did it make you feel? Did it make you feel empowered, like you knew what to do next? Or did it make you feel stressed, like this was your fault? There are different perspectives of how we perceive any type of information. So anyways, that's just some food for thought on the types of people. Nutrient deficient. Okay, please, what about nutrient deficiencies? Is there a specific test to determine nutrient deficiencies? Gold standard is actually assessments, and I'll tell you why. There are certain nutritional deficiencies. Think about the body as using nutrients differently in different ways that some can't be tested for as well. So I will offer an example of this that's really helpful. If a child, like it would take a lot, like your child, if they were deficient in calcium, would likely, if they tested for it, literally have rickets, which is like the bowing of the legs. And one of the reasons is that our body, our body sends signals like that amygdala signal, when we don't have enough calcium in our bloodstream, the body will actually send out signals for our bones to pull calcium from the bones and put it back into the bloodstream, which is why one of the big studies, which I'm a big believer of plant-based diets or plant-forward diets. I shouldn't say plant-based, plant-forward diets. Now, but there is a study that shows that a lot of elderlies right now who were plant-based and like fully vegan have a higher rate of fractures. And that does make sense, right? Because they don't eat a lot of calcium if they're not supplementing, or if they're not using sources that they know are actively going in. And these sources were not as available back in the day. So when we cut out dairy, which just so everyone knows, dairy is actually leaches calcium out of your body too. It's very inflammatory. But when we cut out dairy, there does need to be a little bit of a thought process around how can I help my child absorb or get dairy from other places like beans, lentils, spinach, kale. Obviously, kale a better option because of oxalates and other issues. But there are plans that need to be made. And so although I do agree due to like folate receptor attachment, and I agree that dairy is super inflammatory, we do need to be looking at the whole picture. And we need to be also prioritizing nutrients that help others. So the assessment style based on symptoms is usually the better way to go. That's what we do in our program. Actually, the whole family can test in our program in the BLA for that. And that's also a conversation you can have and book a call for. And the BLA is also going to be undergoing some changes very, very soon. So probably the best time to get in would be now. But now saying that, I am yet to take an organic acid test and stool test, but I'm also considering methylation panel to test for and folate receptor tests, but the tests are very expensive. So I want to know, based on your experience, which ones do you recommend first? So this is my actual full transparent honesty, is that you can know if you're like, so number one, the FRAT test will test for attachment and for blockages. And you can literally just increase folate in your child's diet and it will tell you if it works or not. If you see a dramatic change within 2 weeks, of introducing folate rich foods, both in bio, like it could be in juicing, could be in smoothies, could be just in regular food, but it's like intentional every single day. And you support your child through having healthy detox, like healthy organs that are naturally detoxing. So just basically like the pathways are open, they're pooping every day, etc. Then you will know if that's an option that you would want to have a conversation with your daughter. To me, what I see and what we see in the program is that families who get the FRAT test positive and get put on leucovorin without addressing the foundations end up with children who are extremely deregulated, sometimes aggressive, pooping on the floor. They have massive behaviors. There's a titration process that needs to be done with leucovorin that is, and then for some kids, it does nothing. So we have a protocol within our bigger program. It's actually part of the system. It's nutritional therapy, and then you go into a folate protocol that focuses on a natural bioavailable form of folate, which is not supplement-based. And we actually have 50% of the people that is obviously something that they need support in. And we maintain that if it explodes speech, if it's supporting awareness, receptive language, then we actually keep it going for at least 3 months until we move on to the next part. For methylation, you can see changes in methylation every quarter. So basically, if you test for methylation this quarter and you go on a lifestyle journey, it could test different if it's a variant versus an actual like homogeneous gene. We also have to remember that genes, even if we have them, even if they're low methylation, how they express is actually only based in environment. So I think it's like 98% of it is environment based. So those are the two tests that are not, and they're probably the most expensive tests, but they're not the ones that for me really move the needle. For our kids in our program, we see that methylation, like you can see children detoxing. Like I see oat tests and toxicity tests that are so different in improvements in 3 months that it doesn't make sense to go get them methyl tested, because that's actually what it's saying. If we have the MTHFR variant, it's because we don't detox as well. But the truth is that I consistently see that to not be the case. So I just want to offer that. If I was considering an oat test, I would think of the oat test. So the oat test can actually give you an idea if a folate issue is at hand, because it will give you a little bit of some of the nutritional deficiencies based on the urine sample. But it is a screening device, so it'll give you a good idea of the area. So if I was to pick between all of these, I would do the organic acid test. And actually, most people will start here so that they know what test to order after. I hope that helps. Okay, so now diving. Hold on a second. Yeah, no worries. So the other space that I wanted to talk about is like families that are really interested in fecal transplant, and families that are looking for which test. The one that I recommended out of all of those as a starting point would be the oat test, the organic acid test. It's more of a screening tool, but at least you're not wasting money in areas that you don't need to. So some people will order like an organic acid test with a GI map with like a ton of other things, like a mycotoxin test. But then if you're not testing positive for mycotoxins on the organic acid, you wasted a lot of money to get that secondary test. So anyways, that's just my personal opinion. But some people want to know all of it right away, and that's totally fine. And if it's within your budget and your child is, compliant with testing practices, then that's great, because a lot of people, that's traumatic and